Welcome in to a football show. My name is Zach Lyons. You can follow me on Twitter at FWordsPod. And then we are joined by Stoney Keeley. Braden he's not on vacation. It's almost like a working vacation, I guess you could say. He won't be here for the week. Stoney's filling in today on Monday. You can follow him on Twitter at Stoney Keeley. And Thursday will be Mike Herndon. He'll be joining the show. So you get to hear me and Mike, or basically me berate or yell at Mike and tell him that he's wrong twice this week. So lucky for you guys. We are brought to you by Sinkers Beverages. Basically an award-winning, kind of like this podcast. Well, not this podcast. Football and Other F Words is award-winning. But hey, you've won awards. I've won awards. Maybe this is now considered an award-winning podcast since both of us have awards. But Sinkers Beverages, undefeated, reigning champions of liquor store. Go to East Nashville, go to Sinker Beverages, or go to sinkerbeverages.com and join the in crowd to get the latest updates on anything that is new and hip and cool. You can also go to Hendersonville to their sister store, Bluegrass Beverages. It's been around since the 70s. And then you got the Kingston Group, buildkg.com, for any of your home remodeling or renovation needs. Call them. That's all you got to do. They'll come in, give you an estimate, tell you what you need to do. They're locally owned, locally operated. They're probably some of the best and hardest workers in the construction game. So Kingston Group, buildkg.com. Of course, you can read both of our stuff at stackingtheinbox.com. And get some big stuff heading your way this week. Film Friday, was Traylon Burks' best game, which was a thorough, in-depth breakdown by Stoney Keeley.
I'm curious, Zach, where do you think that Packers game sits on the scale of his best and worst games?
Oh, it's easily his best. I don't feel like it's really a contest.
Some of the advanced metrics you looked at from the Bengals game suggested that might have been, he was on a run there, that Packers, Bengals, and Eagles game before he got his lights knocked out.
Yeah. I would say I think it's his most complete game from start to finish, and I think that's really what he needed and what matters. Yeah, definitely I think his best.
I thought so.
It was very thorough, and I think it was probably the most in-depth you'll see anywhere breaking down that game. So stackingtheinbox.com.
Which is funny because I was out of office last week dealing with a family emergency, and I believe my exact text message was to you. I don't know if I can get this piece I'm doing on the linebackers done because it's kind of heavy and I'm really getting into the weeds on it. And then I just went and wrote 2,400 words on Traylon Burks against the Green Bay Packers. It really evolved from what does Burks do well to what does Burks do well, and also why did Todd Downing suck in what was considered his best game of the season still.
Right. Right. Speaking of the linebackers, we'll be talking about the linebackers. We'll be doing our Titans training camp takeaways. We are going to also talk about the offensive line discourse and the power of positivity, like I said. But first, Stoney, shit is going down in Indianapolis. Oh my gosh, and I am enjoying every bit of it. The discourse around Jonathan Taylor, the stuff that Jim Irsay is being allowed to tweet. Someone take that man's phone away if you care about your organization or anything like that. And then, of course, just a few moments ago, Zach Moss, the backup and potential starter if Jonathan Taylor continues to sit out, running back, he goes down with a broken arm and he's out for at least 6 weeks. It's pretty much a comedy of errors brought on by the owner and exasperated by the fans. And the same fans that are booing Andrew Luck are now turning on Jonathan Taylor because he just wants to get paid a couple extra $1 million. We have seen there are reports out there that he's asking $16 million, but nobody has attributed it to anyone. It is just ML Football, which is one of those aggregate, Titans Twitter or not Titans Twitter, but aggregate X accounts that you can't really trust because it's their sources supposedly, and I don't know who the fuck their sources are. So all this to say, it's beautiful. And how much are you enjoying it?
Well, I'm enjoying it. I've got my popcorn scrolling Twitter. There's a lot of back and forth. It's really funny to watch Colts fans implode because for so long, this team just held dominion over the Tennessee Titans. But I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, the football scouts that you and I are, this is Evan Hull's time to shine right
Yeah.
now. This gives us an
He's
opportunity.
their only running back.
Selfishly, I'm looking at you and I thinking, wow, we could come out looking pretty good on this because we were both high on Evan Hull after seeing him at the Senior Bowl down in Mobile this year. So I'm kind of rooting for him to have a pretty decent campaign, but it just really feels like this is an organization that's in complete disarray right now. And somebody does need to take Jim Irsay's phone away from him, but I'm not going to be the one to do it because I want to see how this all keeps going.
Yeah, it's insane that they're willing to kind of take away one of the best parts of their offense over a few $1,000,000, which, it's 16 let's say if it is $16 million a year. For a running back, yes, it's very expensive. But for a focal point of your offense that can be there every week, that moves the chains, that's proven that when you give him the ball, you win. I think Derrick Henry put it best, and this is something that I'm going to be writing about Stacking the Inbox. There are times where the running back touches the ball more than the damn quarterback. And
Mhm.
they're not getting paid that way. $16 million is going to make or break you, especially when you got Cole Kmet getting double-digit APY per year and all that kind of stuff.
Well, he got like 40 million or close to it.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous contract for Cole Kmet. It's, to me, and we got Screw the Colts. How about our kid Will the Thrill Levis? We'll get there. This is a full hour show, Dr. Lipschitz. We are going to enjoy, see, it says right here, enjoying the misery of the Colts. We are going to bask in it, bathe in it, snort it up like Jim Irsay would a couple of ground up pills. We're going to enjoy a little bit of Colts misery before we get to him. We're going to get to plenty, like the rest of this is all Titan stuff. So we're going to get to Will Levis and his day-to-day and all that kind of stuff.
I do want to say Dr. Lipschitz needs to get his fingers ready because he's going to be typing when I get into my thoughts on Will Levis later.
Yeah.
He's a known Levis truther.
Yeah, I maybe he is the guy that's been harassing the media. I don't know if he is or not, but there's a guy that's changed his name to Pretty Boy Kelly on Twitter, and
I think it is him.
That he's harassing media members, and they're like, "Dude, we have talked about Levis, but there's also like 15,000 other players we got to talk about." I don't know if that's him or not.
Have we ruled out the possibility that Dr. Lipschitz is Will Levis, like on a burner account?
We have not.
Okay.
I will say this: Dr. Lipschitz is the name of the child psychologist from the Rugrats. That's what I'll always remember
right.
Dr. Lipschitz from. But anyway, this Colts stuff is amazing. They're bringing it upon themselves, and it couldn't happen to a better fan base that they're having to go through this because they booed Andrew Luck, and what idiots, because now all they gotten is like spare parts at quarterbacks throughout this whole time. And also, before we move on to Titans training camp notes, Greg Doyle, what an unprofessional, scummy article that he wrote, who downplay someone else's education just because they went to Miami-Dade. And then also for him to say, well, who the hell is this guy? And what does he have to, who is he? He's the guy that just negotiated Shaq Leonard's contract in the same fucking team that you cover. He's the guy that just negotiated Titus Howard's contract.
Yeah.
I mean, like, spare me that this guy that is a man in the pocket of Jim Irsay if I've ever seen it. Totally unprofessional.
I was wondering if maybe he let Irsay came into his office one day and was like, "Hey man, I'm going to need you to slide over just a little bit. Give me this keyboard. I got to type something up real quick." And of course, he's in his pocket. Yeah, go for it, boss.
I think Dr. Lipschitz, aka Pretty Boy Kelly, brings up a good point right here. When someone like Dan Snyder leaves the NFL or leaves an organization, someone has to become the new Dan Snyder, right?
Yeah.
See, it's like when you're in friend groups. If one friend leaves and he was the guy that you all shat on and like made fun of and poked fun, and he moves out of state, then the next person, there's always a low man on the totem pole in your friend group. And I think that Jim Irsay has a clear lead right now as asshole owner for real. Because, I mean, like, if you really think about all the other owners, they're all kind of like chilling, having good time and all this stuff. He's really the only guy that keeps putting himself out in front of the media. And I'm here for it. I'm here for some Colts drama and demise and all that kind of stuff.
I'm curious, victory lap aside, how do you think this impacts the 2023 season? Like, the locker room can't be looking at this behavior on Twitter and thinking, that's my owner. That's the guy we're going to get behind.
Well, don't forget, they just went through a dark period last year when their owner hired a player that has never coached before to be their head coach. And now he is treating one of their best players like utter garbage. And it's not good. And it can't be, that the fall guy is going to be Chris Ballard. That Shane Steichen isn't going to be able to handle all this drama his rookie year as a head coach, along with all the extra responsibilities that comes with it. And then you got Anthony Richardson getting, he decided to get his deviated septum fixed. And it just seems like there's a lot going on for this Colts team that it's going to be another rough year for Colts fans. And I don't think they know how to handle 2 back-to-back years.
How deep into the season do we get before Jim Irsay signs Jeff Saturday to play running back?
Oh, my gosh. I hope it's like in a couple of weeks now that Zach Moss is down.
Yeah, get him out there for training camp.
That'd be amazing. It should make you thankful it should make any fan base thankful that their owner isn't Dan Snyder or Jim Irsay at this point. Zach Whitener says it makes me more thankful for Miss Amy every day, and I am with you. Let's head into, since we're talking about Miss Amy, to Titans training camp, where she is everywhere talking to all the players because she loves football and loves players and doesn't like making people miserable.
Queen of the city.
Queen of the city, indeed. I want to start just because I was going to talk about Levis and the QBs first, but just because Dr. Lipschitz had to chime in, I'm going to talk about DeAndre Hopkins first and make him wait even longer because I'm running the show. I'm running the show. I'm a heel. I'm in the heel role. Okay. DeAndre Hopkins has been practicing like a madman. And I don't know if it's solely because of the narrative around him, but I sure as shit am glad that he is, because I have talked about one of the main main storylines from training camp that I want to pay attention to is DeAndre Hopkins' involvement and getting the reps in, not necessarily learning the offense because he sort of kind of knows it, and Mike Vrabel kind of alluded to that, but getting that chemistry up with Ryan Tannehill. And what I want to focus on is not only is he practicing, not only is he making highlight catches, but Ryan Tannehill is force feeding the ever-loving shit out of him. He is basically a feedie. He's like got him on the bed, strapped in, and he's just feeding him pudding. Football pudding is what he's doing.
Yeah, and I think there are things about this that we're kind of glossing over because of the highlight reel catches. The one-on-one rep against Kristian Fulton where he goes up and brings the ball down with one hand. This is all well and good, but what we're seeing so far, I got my notepad. I love my notepads.
I got like 3 on my desk.
Yeah, you see the grit from Hopkins, and it's July. You see him coaching guys up. There's a quote that Teron Davenport pulled from Nick Westbrook-Akine where NWI says that Hopkins being out there forces you to elevate your game. So with Hopkins, not only are you getting these highlight reel catches, you're seeing what a focus Ryan Tannehill is going to have on him, but you're also seeing ways that he is impacting the team as a whole. It's great stuff, man. Like the way Ryan Tannehill is feeding DeAndre Hopkins, feed me this pairing, feed me this relationship.
Well, I mean, it's great because Ryan Tannehill does, he's had a lot of practice over the last 2 years, but he does excel at tight window throws if there's no separation, and there's nobody that can turn a tight window throw into a highlight reel catch better than DeAndre Hopkins. I just love that basically every day DeAndre Hopkins is at least catching one touchdown. He's at least being like, he's the first target on play action. He's the target on some of these plays, just, all pass plays. Maybe that is on purpose, and that's probably a good thing that it is. We know that they're going to be shifting the offense and the way they approach it in 11-on-11, 7-on-7s tomorrow. We'll get to that in a minute. But it's just a good sign and a good feeling to see. It's like when Tannehill was just force feeding Chig and Kyle Phillips last year at this time. That actually translated into the regular season. So this obviously should translate into the regular season, which is a very, I guess, duh thing to say because it is DeAndre Hopkins and he is the number one wide receiver. But stuff like this does matter, specifically for a quarterback like Ryan Tannehill, who has shown over the years that what he does in training camp is what he's going to do in the regular season. If he throws a bunch of picks in training camp and looks really bad and really off like he did heading into 2021, he's going to look really bad in 2021. Last year, we saw really good Ryan Tannehill in the offseason, and he looked pretty damn good in the regular season if he only had anything go right around him.
Yeah. So we're seeing these highlights. DeAndre Hopkins looking good. Treylon Burks is also looking pretty good so far. How do you feel about their relationship and kind of the dynamic between the two, the week so far in training camp? Does it give you hope? Do you think that Hopkins is the clear wide receiver 1 and Burks is the wide receiver 2? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think they're going to be at a critical juncture, right? Like, what you saw from Burks last year did not scream to me wide receiver 1. Now, did not mean that he could not turn into a wide receiver 1, but right now, when DeAndre Hopkins signed, he's wide receiver 1. But what I do think it has a high possibility of happening is this allows Treylon Burks to shine, to get on the radar, to build chemistry, kind of like as the wide receiver 2, and overtake DeAndre Hopkins as the wide receiver 1 by the end of the year. And that will be a good thing that's what I've always thought would benefit Treylon Burks the most, is having, I was hoping that it was going to be A.J. Brown, but having DeAndre Hopkins there as a mentor or a guy that will take the pressure off of him, that's going to help everybody, but specifically going to help Treylon Burks immediately.
Yeah, I kind of feel like we could be heading towards a situation where there's a more of not necessarily force feeding, but maybe more of a situational role where Hopkins is handling a lot of the underneath work, and maybe Burks is becoming more of the deep threat option for this Titans offense. Either way, I feel like we're talking about Hopkins. We're only 1 week into training camp, but I would say it's exceeding my expectations at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think just him practicing exceeded my expectations because I thought for sure that he would have taken several days off already into training camp.
Yeah.
And that's just because of Julio. But so I'm very glad that he's not. I agree with you. I think Burks is going to be, it's kind of like Corey Davis and A.J. Brown in 2019. Corey Davis handled a lot of the dirty work while A.J. Brown was your explosive playmaker. Because while he can make catches down the field, DeAndre Hopkins, he's not an explosive athlete. A.J. Brown was, Treylon Burks is. There's your dynamic. So I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Speaking of dynamic, oh boy, it finally happened. Will Levis had a banger of a day. He turned in his best performance of the offseason. And I have to say, in all my years of following Titans training camp, which has been a long time, his 7 for 7 that I'm about to read, I believe, is the first time that not only is it the first time that we've seen 3 touchdowns in one of these series, because they do little series of 20-plus yards, but also the first time we've seen 3 back-to-back-to-back touchdowns. Like, no plays in between them, all touchdowns. And it was complete to Justin Rigg for a touchdown, complete to Trayshawn Harrison for a touchdown, complete to Reggie Roberson in a tight window for a touchdown. Reggie Roberson himself got 2 touchdowns today, if I'm not mistaken. But 3 touchdowns back-to-back-to-back is pretty impressive. Now, great sign for him. Malik Willis also looked good, but I don't think anybody had a better camp today on the offensive side of the football than Will Levis, and it showed from the glowing reviews.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here. Okay. And I might be cast in a negative light for saying this, but the things that he is being lauded for, drive, throwing into tight windows. I believe it was Sam Phelan that reported 3 touchdowns, each from 20 plus yards into tight windows. Those were not things that I was concerned about with Will Levis. What I was more concerned about were the ball placement, sensing pressure in the pocket, and touch on the short to intermediate throws. I don't know, like I said before we started recording, I was out of office last week, so if something was reported on that I might have missed, you can call me correct, or you can correct me on that. But I want to know about the touch. And we heard Mike Vrabel talking about the good decisions he made. PK pulled that from the Vrabel presser. It's up on his Twitter feed. The A to Z guys were talking about his ball placement. Those are good things that I want to see marked improvement on, but let me know how he's doing with the short to intermediate game. And then I will hop on board the bandwagon with you guys and be completely stoked about Will Levis.
I thought it was Teron Davenport who said it, but I can't find it on his accounts. But someone did say today that on a couple of different tweets that he did have some nice touch on throws. You could tell that he's working on it, but you can also tell that he's working on it mentally, right? Like that means that maybe he's a little bit slower. He's taking an extra beat to think about it, but he's getting that right. I think that was Buck yesterday, but someone else today had the stuff that he looked a lot better today throwing the touch. Here's my caution for everybody around this. And this comes straight from Mike Vrabel. Right now, everything they're doing is very scripted. They're given the script, they go home, they study. It's very scripted. They come out and run the plays. Tomorrow, on Tuesday, is the biggest day so far that actually matters for the Titans quarterbacks, from Ryan Tannehill to Malik Willis to Will Levis, because they're getting a simulated game plan to take home, just like they would on a night before a game. And they're going to come out, and it's not going to be scripted. It's going to be someone on the sidelines calling the plays, and they're going to be in-game situations where they're making decisions. On some of these plays, they're allowing like the play to progress. Even if it's supposed to be a sack, they still let the play happen and finish out. That's not going to be how it is tomorrow, more than likely. So it'll be interesting to see how much of this changes without knowing the sequence of plays and having to call the plays at the line to everybody in the huddle, getting them all set up, going up against the defense in a real game-like situation. How much do things change for these quarterbacks? Because Braden Gall said on Thursday, he said that when Malik Willis was in 7-on-7s, he looked great. When he got to 11-on-11s, he looked like old Malik Willis. So it's going to be interesting to see now that you're going to have the extra burden of relaying the plays and listening to the plays and doing everything you're supposed to do as a quarterback on Sundays, how much of this situation changes. What are you feeling about that? Do you think it's a good barometer of what to expect in a preseason game from these guys?
Yeah, I would say so, and I think it adds kind of another wrinkle to the competition that we're seeing between Willis and Levis as well. Like more real simulation, right? I think that's the goal here. So far, you win where you're supposed to win, and I think it's safe to say that Levis has done that so far. So for you, I mean, at what point, what's the next stage? What are you going to get out of this? Is there a point where you see the progress over the next few days that you kind of flip and Levis becomes QB2?
Well, the first step will be tomorrow for sure, because Vrabel even said they'll both get some work with the 2s and the 3s. So It won't just be Levis going 3s versus 3s. It'll be Levis going with 2 versus 2s and vice versa. So you're going to see a little bit more of a gray area to compare. I guess the Venn diagram is going to overlap a little bit more for Malik Willis and Will Levis here, that we're going to see just how far Will Levis has come and just how far Malik Willis has come. And if Malik Willis he has to show in these situations when they pop up at camp, when they're game simulated, when they're going to be doing the team versus team practices, all this, he's going to have to show that he's not only greatly improved over the previous year, but he's improved enough over Will Levis. Because right now, if you were to ask me, from what I've heard, from what people have said, from the analysis on the radio, from the analysis on the TV, from podcasts, everything, is that Will Levis and Malik Willis, there's not that much difference.
Right.
And that's
Sure.
not good for Malik Willis, even though that he has glaringly improved. You're glaringly improving from an F minus. That's going to be a big improvement. So
And also,
he has to show more.
Yeah, you're also competing with a guy that just got to the NFL. You've got a full offseason and a full season under your belt.
Yeah. You have he's going to have to show a lot. Like if you want to maintain the quarterback 2, Malik Willis is going to have to show. I know this sounds like a big burden to put on a young quarterback in year 2. He's going to have to show near starter-like ability in all of these situations. His margin of error is so thin that if him and Will Levis look like the same quarterback at the same level of progression, there probably isn't a spot for Malik Willis on this roster. He may go be trade bait, or he may get cut, or he may go to the practice squad, or he may just be third string and they just keep him. But you as a quarterback, when you're in the situation that Malik Willis is in, you have to show and prove so much more than maybe if they hadn't have drafted Will Levis. If they had moved on from and just kept and didn't even draft Will Levis, his margin for error is way bigger. Right now, it's very thin.
Yeah, sorry, I just realized my camera zoomed out. I must have got a text message or something, and now everybody can see my messy office. And I also look like Kyler Murray sitting next to DeJuan Jones.
The other thing that I found interesting out there is that Monty Rice, he doesn't have a firm grasp on this starting inside linebacking position, and he's quite the shit talker for a guy who doesn't even have a starting job. He went out of his way, like crossed the field to talk shit to Colton Dow of all people. Like oh, you ain't in the NCAA anymore. Like, hey, like Monty Rice, who the fuck do you think you are to be able to talk shit to anybody? You're losing your job to Dr. Jack Gibby.
Yeah, listen, it's a tough scene for Monty Rice supporters. I'm not gonna lie, we are down bad, but I still think that people overlook Monty Rice and how good he is because of the role he plays. This is practically an invisible role that he's in for the Titans right now. And I'll just say, like, there's a reason playing this position made guys like Dr. Gibby and Dylan Cole and even Joe Johnson. I keep wanting to call him Joe Jonas, like the Titans were sending a Jonas brother out there to play linebacker. But there's a reason all these guys look good. And for me, again, I don't have a Titans playbook. I don't know the intricacies, schematically speaking, about this Titans defense, but this particular role that Monty Rice plays it's conducive to kind of being around the ball. You're kind of like in the way at all times in the middle of the field. And I feel like that makes it look like these linebackers are more impactful than they really are. But the things that I liked about Monty Rice is he's really good run defense, crashing gaps, closing up holes, and stuffing running backs. He's good at tracking running backs. I think he's better in coverage than people give him credit for. I found a film study I did for Sobros Network last December where he's like stride for stride with Keenan Allen down the field. People have, flashbacks of Evan Ingram scoring touchdowns on him, but it was a really nicely designed pick play that you kind of tip your cap to Doug Peterson and the Jags for executing. But all of that said, the thing for Monty Rice is being healthy. And also it's by the nature of the position, as I laid it out, you're kind of disposable at a certain point. And it kind of makes me wonder, seeing stuff like this happening out there and the reality of, the coaches will tell you by who they're sending out there. The reality is the coaching staff does not seem to be as high on Monty Rice as guys like me are.
Yeah, I mean, they are. I find it odd that out of all the linebackers that could possibly get the starting reps, that it's continuously and truly Jack Gibby that is getting them all. Talking
Yeah,
about a guy that didn't even make the roster last year at the beginning of the
I
cuts,
know.
and he got brought back. And then I know they like him. They like his length, apparently. Chance Campbell is still there.
Mhm.
Luke Gifford's a free agent they brought in. But you would have thought that this was Monty Rice's job. And you come back from the break. You come back where he had the job, right? Like Monty Rice was getting work with the ones on the regular at OTAs. And he comes in to training camp, and all of a sudden he doesn't have the firm grasp on his job that he thought, and he can't keep his damn mouth shut, and he's embarrassing himself.
Yeah.
And I wasn't a fan of the pick in the third round anyway. Now, if you would have told me they drafted him in the fifth or the sixth, I'd have been fine. But in the third round was way too high. And then he can't even stay healthy. And he's okay. Like, I thought that he was a quality linebacker. I said, if anybody can get anything out of him, it'll be Mike Vrabel.
Sure. Yeah.
But Mike Vrabel thinks he can get more out of Jack Gibby because apparently there must be something about Jack Gibby that is providing Vrabel all of this. I just want to say, like, it probably won't work out. Kind of like Dylan Cole. It'll be good for 4 games, and then they're going to be in a world of trouble. But I'm very surprised that the way that they're handling the Monty Rice thing, that it's obviously telling that Monty Rice is just, he can't even win or hold on to what should be clearly his job.
Well, Zach, the writing was on the wall when Jack Gibbons got a nickname, Dr. Gibby.
Yeah.
Monty Rice doesn't have a nickname. We know what that means for Mike Vrabel.
Yeah.
I fully intended to come on this show. Braden asked me if I would fill in last week. And I fully intended to come here and be like, I'm going to defend Monty Rice on this show because you and Mike went in on him on a recent episode of Football and Other F Words. And I'm like, no, this is my chance. I'm going to stand up there. And then you see all this happening. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm not going to mention Monty Rice. And then I get the text message from you. And you're like, we're going to talk Will Levis. We're going to talk DeAndre Hopkins. We're going to talk Kristian Fulton, not to get ahead of myself here. But I'm like breathing a sigh of relief. Like, okay, I'm just going to let this Monty Rice thing go quietly into the night. And no, here we are.
Yeah. I just couldn't, just the
It's
way,
something.
just when the way that Vrabel has talked about the whole situation and the way that the media has covered it since training camp has started back up, it tells you something.
Yeah,
And
I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think as analysts, I'm battling a cough. I'm doing my best here, man. Sorry.
I didn't even hear it.
I think as fanalists, if you will, there's an important part of this thing where I can watch as much tape as I want to, and I can form the conclusion that Monty Rice is going to be a pretty good inside linebacker. But ultimately, when you're smacked in the face with something like this, like Dr. Gibby getting the lion's share of the reps at the starting position, you kind of have to adjust. And I'm willing to do that,
Yeah, I luckily
bad.
this offseason I haven't really had to adjust on anything because I've just been constantly right, and this is going to be another one.
You have been.
We're gonna notch it up onto the right column. Monty Rice got it
so
up there.
far.
I will say this: the guy that could prove me wrong the most is having himself a damn good camp. He's physical. He is full throttle every play. He's everywhere on the field. And Kristian Fulton is looking to have, in a contract year, of course, keep that in mind, a contract year, have himself a nice dandy little rebound of a season. And I am so interested into seeing how long he can keep up this activity level throughout, because he's going full force right now. That means every practice, a guy who has been injured, who has known to struggle with injuries, is going full force, balls to the wall, every play. Can a guy like that struggled with injuries maintain that level of competition all through the summer into the regular season without any hangups? That is the big storyline for me And one of the biggest surprises of camp is the whole narrative around Kristian Fulton.
Yeah, I'm with you because going into the offseason throughout free agency, the draft, you had kind of sniffed out that, hey, maybe something's not quite right here with Kristian Fulton. And I agreed with you because of how Vrabel, his demeanor in the press conferences when talking about him kind of felt like, I don't know, there's something here. I mean, are we feeling like the bad vibes are cleared up with Kristian Fulton?
I'm feeling that way. I mean,
Yeah.
every time that he's asked about Kristian Fulton or brings him up, I mean, he has that glow. He got his groove back.
Well,
Like,
it sounds too like there maybe were some concerns, but now that he's shown up to training camp, the tone in some of these press conferences when he's talking about Fulton is more of like, well, he showed up, he's bigger, but he's still able to move well. He's doing good out there. I'm not going to go as far as to say it's Vrabel acknowledging like, oh, it was okay after all, but that's kind of the sense that I get just from his body language and tone and demeanor and that sort of thing is kind of like maybe we were worried about this, but he proved us wrong whenever he showed up to camp, and he's getting in work. And another facet of this whole thing is, or this whole DeAndre Hopkins thing is that Fulton's going to be, it's a trial by fire. I mean, he's out there against one of the best in the league.
yeah, when he's out there against AJ Brown, he had one of his best seasons. So hopefully,
Yeah.
this all comes together and it's a turnaround for Kristian Fulton. Maybe not a turnaround enough where he's asking for a lot of money, but hopefully the whole cornerback group, because Kristian Fulton turns it around, everybody else is able to adjust to their roles a little bit better than they were last year. Because if he goes down with injury, sure, there's Sean Murphy Bunting, who is having a quiet camp, I guess you could say, for right now. I do know that he got a PBU or maybe an interception. I think he had an interception. On Ryan Tannehill today. So, he made a little noise today, but you want Kristian Fulton to be the alpha that he was. The guy that got into DK Metcalf's head all game long. You want that guy, not the guy who got bulldozed by AJ Brown and pulled his groin. Like, we need to see, I think everybody needs to see Kristian Fulton be that DK Metcalf 2021 version of himself to feel comfortable about this pass defense as a whole. And it seems like Vrabel, Chris Harris, they have seen the improvement that they were hoping to see from Kristian Fulton. And what I've noticed today is that Chris Harris basically is good or bad plays. He is talking through everything with the defensive backs over on the side of the field.
Yeah, I'm struggling to get to an optimistic level because I heard Braden on Thursday say that, and I think Mike or you, one of you have said too, like they're oddly deep in the secondary, but I'm still not there yet. I mean, keep stringing these practices together, and we'll see. But like right now, I kind of feel like this is a group that is an injury away from things getting really weird. And I've told you this off air. I don't know that I've tweeted it or made it public, but not every free agent signing is going to hit. And I feel like Sean Murphy Bunting is the one that I watched. And if you read my piece on Film Friday on Stacking the Inbox about him, he's a pretty steady, pretty reliable cornerback, but he does have that one thing that kind of makes him susceptible. And it's those like change of direction routes where you in or out either way, he tends to kind of drop back and keep everything in front of him. And then guys just snap him off. And while a lot of cornerbacks will probably tell you like, hey, I'll take a 5-yard route over a touchdown bomb any day, I think it is something that opposing offensive coordinators and wide receivers can exploit. So if he doesn't pan out, and if Kristian Fulton is injured, and then Roger McCreary, this change in position doesn't quite work for him, well, then what? I mean, I posited this to Paul Kaharski in one of his recent mailbags, and he had an answer that kind of it felt pretty illuminating. Was that this coaching staff probably feels that the defensive front is going to be good enough to where they can win with what they have in the secondary. And I know that's where a lot of people are at, but I'm kind of teetering on the edge here. I feel like they're on thin ice with this position group.
Yeah, I'm with you. To me, I look at Sean Murphy-Bunting, and I know that he puts in the work, not just on the field, but off the field. One of the biggest things that everybody talks about is that he is the guy in the film room almost all the time. If you're asking where Sean Murphy-Bunting is, you're probably getting directed to the film room. He is a guy who wants to work on his craft in between the ears and on the field. Sometimes all that good work works, right? I mean, we saw it in Tampa Bay.
Sure.
And sometimes it just falls flat, and you don't see it. Hard work is great, but not every little bit of being a hard worker translates to the field. But he's with a coaching staff that I do feel can put him in situations to succeed. But I am with you. This same defensive front did not help the passing game last year, and it's very likely it won't happen again. I am sure maybe Arden Key and Harold Landry being back maybe changes that just a little bit. But this defensive back group outside of Kristian Fulton hasn't had true success, even with a elite run stopping defense consistently year to year, and pass rush that was really good 2021 for sure, and pretty good 2022. It just hasn't came together for this defense all at the same time, but I am kind of feeling a little optimistic that this year could change that.
Yeah, and all of this is to say, like, to tie this topic up with a nice and neat with a bow on top, is that so far so good. What you want to see, you're seeing so far. Sean Murphy-Bunting's making plays in camp. Kristian Fulton is out there stringing together a good series of practices. Sounds like he's in shape. He's bulkier, bigger a little bit. Like, this is good stuff. But in the back of my mind, there's still this idea of, hey, if things don't quite work to this vision, they're ill-equipped to just plug guys in, and then we could be seeing teams just throwing bombs over the head of these defensive backs. Now, I know we've given, I don't want to turn this into the Dr. Lipschitz show, because we've given him quite a bit of shine in today's episode, but he does point out the Tampa people said he just didn't understand the Fangio style zone defense they played. And I saw that out on the internet too. Again, like, just being transparent with you guys, I'm not in deep the Vic Fangio defensive playbook or anything, but there were times that it kind of felt like there were some instances of hesitancy on the tape where it's like wasn't quite sure where to go, and the next thing you know, the guy's open by 5 yards, breaking the route in. So maybe that is something to be said there. But I think so far, I would say I am kind of moving towards comfortable with the secondary, while not quite there yet.
Well, talking about someone that is quite there, that would be Sinkers Beverages, because they're quite there in East Nashville, and they're award-winning, reigning champs of liquor and beverages and everything that you could want. Massive store, big store. They have a wide selection of beers, lots of alcohol to choose from. They'll give you your recommendations. You tell them your taste. Head over to Sinkers Beverages. Join the in crowd. That way when the barrel that we picked on a football show, and some of our listeners went with us, that way when it is available in their store exclusively at Sinkers Beverages. And, of course, the Kingston Group. They're there for you whenever you need remodeling or renovation, whatever you need for your house. Call the Kingston Group up. Get a quote. Get some advice. Don't make the mistake of just hiring the first guy off angieslist.com. Go to the Kingston Group, buildkg.com, schedule a consultation with them, and they'll treat you right. Locally owned, locally operated. All right, Stoney. Today on Stacking the Inbox, I wrote about how I am kind of sick and tired of the same old tired narratives year after year, or one person will cling to one particular topic and they'll bring it up all the time.
Sure.
And I am here, and I think the offensive line discourse needs to change. I think that if you look at the 2015, I wrote about this today. If you look at the 2015 offensive line and go to the 2016 offensive line, you'll see that they brought in a few extra people. So basically Byron Bell, Taylor Lewan, Brian Schwenke, Chance Warmack, Jeremiah Patasi, Jamon Meredith, Joe Looney and Quentin Spain were your offensive linemen in 2015. In 2016, Taylor Lewan, Quentin Spain, Ben Jones, Chance Warmack, who turned into Josh Klein, that he got replaced, and Jack Conklin. But even then, heading in 2016, no one, after a year where they were one of the worst offensive lines in 2015, no one thought they would see the drastic improvement that they saw in 2016. We're talking about they went from, in pressure rates, 5.9% sack rate to 2.7%, 4.8% in hits to 1.6, 20.4% in hurries, 19.3, then 31.1 in total pressure percentage, and 23.6 in 2016. That's a huge drop. So I ask everybody, why can't this happen for the 2023 team? We're talking about the horrible 2022 season where they had 5.1% in sacks, 5.6% QB hits, 21.6 in QB hurries, and 32.3 total pressures percent. That is right at or above, slightly above the 2015 group. This team doesn't need elite like it got from 2016. It just needs a little close to average. And what everybody is discounting is the wide receivers that the Titans had last year versus what they also had in 2015, which is pretty piss poor. And the scheme was terrible. So I ask you, isn't it time that we give them the benefit of the doubt and give them a clean slate like everybody was so willing to give some of the offensive staffers that got stuck around or promoted?
Well, I mean, I was willing to give them a clean slate after the draft, and seeing how free agency and the draft worked out in conjunction with one another, felt pretty good about the type of offensive lineman that they signed or drafted, felt pretty good about the level of athlete they were, learning more about the scheme that, we assume the Titans are going to be switching to on offense, and kind of feeling like, okay, there's a shift here. It's not just that they replaced guys, but they kind of went to, it's not just the addition by subtraction, right? That we talk about with like Dennis Daly. It's not just replacing a body for a body, but it's replacing an offensive line that didn't necessarily work with a different system and guys that are tailor-made to excel within it. And so you factor those things together, and yeah, I think clean slate. Now, listen, there's a caveat here because I'm guilty of this. If we're working a bit on the internet, if we're cracking some jokes, keep sending me your Dennis Daly memes. I'm good with it. But if we're getting no empty calories here, which we do on a football show in 440 Sports, I think you're right that there is more nuance to the issues on offense from 2022. And I think it's time to put that behind us and kind of look upon this new look offensive line with a different, fresh set of eyes.
Well, I'm not here to absolve Dennis Daly. Dennis Daly still slob of the year 2022. So yes. I just want to make sure that is very clear. There's no Dennis Daly defense at all.
I will say you wrote on Stacking the Inbox this morning that you weren't going to commit career suicide by defending Dennis Daly. I will say this, and maybe this is me committing career suicide, but all jokes aside, there were times when I was watching the tape and I tried to go back and find it. I thought that I might have tweeted it from either my account or the Unofficial Titans podcast Twitter account, but I couldn't find it. So I think I might have said it on a game reaction pod, and I'm not going to go listen to an entire season's worth of game reaction pods to find the exact quote. But there are times when Dennis Daly had a decent rep or two, and I felt like I could at least see why they liked him. There, I said it.
You're a braver man than me. I'll say this.
Make your memes.
Here's the thing, is that everybody wants to blame just the players. Like when it is brought up, it's just the players. Well, all those players are gone. And let me tell you something. It wasn't just the players. It was a predictable scheme that loaded up that any team could predict, and any opposing defense had a really easy time being able to even predict what plays were going to become. They also have none quality pass catchers on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
The Tennessee Titans had by far the lowest average separation by far in the NFL, which makes it even more difficult on the offensive line. When your quarterback has to hold it a few seconds longer or a few beats longer, when the defenses aren't scared of your defensive backs and they can load up the box, or
Yeah.
sorry, when defenses aren't scared of your wide receiver and they can load up the box a little bit more, when Derrick Henry isn't instilling fear onto the opposing defenses like he was, when they know what plays are coming, that all hurts. Now, that's not to say that the offensive line is zero blame, but that
Yeah.
is to say they got zero help. Much like in 2015 when Ken Wisenhunt's system did nobody any favors. It was a horrible system for the offensive line he had in place. This was a horrible system for the offensive line they had in place. So now, to me, I think that when you take the players that they got, added the offensive weapons that they're going to have, and you add in the new scheme that emphasizes quick, short passes and not long developing routes, that there should be some heavy optimism for this offense and for this offensive line. And we shouldn't automatically go off of some practice reps in the middle of freaking July that, oh, it's over. Ring the alarms. There's no way that the offensive line, all the pieces on the offensive line can work. And here's what I am going to say about that. Prove it. Show me the data where this cannot work, like you say. Like everybody says, well, it's just not that common that all these pieces work. Show me the proof on the offensive line. You're just spouting it and to confirm your own bias, and you have nothing to back it up. Prove to me that wholesale offensive line changes in a new scheme with new weapons added can't work.
It really reminds me of the narrative that Ryan Tannehill is a bad quarterback because this fan base kind of fixated on that Bengals loss. Bad, not to say that Tannehill doesn't deserve some of the blame, but it wasn't a total picture of why the Titans lost that game. And here we are, at this point, it's been well over a year, and people still have this idea in their head that Ryan Tannehill is just a bad quarterback and the Titans can't win with him. That's what it reminds me of anyway. And again, just the memes, like the memes kind of, it's like Barbenheimer a little bit, like we kind of doubled down on Barbenheimer so much that by the time the movies actually came out, people were kind of like, okay, now let's, cut this shit out. Let's just get to the movies. I want to address Eldon's comment here because I think it's a good one. Now explain how he was better than Dylan Radins. I'm not going to say Dennis Daly was better than Dylan Radins. I think you and Braden have done a fantastic job of kind of talking about how he was kind of pigeonholed into guard position. And I'll say this, Dennis Daly's no longer with this team. Keith Carter is no longer with this team. Todd Downing is no longer with this team. I think that speaks for itself when you're talking about the development and the progression of Dylan Radins.
I'll say this to get into our positivity. So the power of positivity, we're pretty positive thinkers when it comes to the 2023 Titans seasons. You a little bit more so than me, but I'm a very positive, always had a positive outlook this whole offseason. And part of that is because of the guy you just mentioned, Ryan Tannehill. And I write about it for the article coming up in the morning, Tuesday morning at stackingtheinbox.com. But I take his data and with this bad offensive line, with the bad playmakers, and I compare it to three other quarterbacks: a bad quarterback, a quarterback that's a carbon copy of Ryan Tannehill in many of the league's eyes, and a quarterback that is near elite status. Those three guys all had average pass blocking offensive lines, okay? I'm not going to name who they are. You're going to have to see all the data. But I will say this. Ryan Tannehill is either better or the same or just right around. They're all like right clustered together in terms of EPA, and he had by far the worst offensive line out of any of them, and that should be some power of positivity now that the offensive line, I'm putting my foot down. I don't know how much better it's going to be, but it will be better. The playmakers are better. Ryan Tannehill will be better, and Ryan Tannehill, and I've already said it once, and I'm going to say it again, if you're a fantasy football player. He'll be a QB1. That means he'll be a top 12 quarterback by the end of the season. And you heard it here first. He's going to get back closer to his 2020 and 2019 seasons just because of everything that has changed in a positive way on this offense.
I agree. I'm right there with you. I heard Thursday's show. You referred to some of the Titans media fans as groundhogs that are just waking up to the Titans actually being pretty decent in 2023. You said that you were the groundhog that had been chugging Red Bull and been up for days. And if that's true, then I feel like I'm the groundhog that has been doing crack and Adderall since April, because I never really wavered in this because of the DNA of this team. You talk about the positive changes within this organization, but there's still a strong base with Mike Vrabel as its head coach that this is going to be a tough out. You hear about it all the time. Other players, other coaches don't want to play the Titans. The Titans are a tough out. They're a physical team. They're competitive. And we know Mike Vrabel is a good game planner, good game manager too. So that gives them a very strong foundation to rest upon. And the rest, like, you build upon it. You don't need some massive overhaul for this team to get back to the playoffs, because you're talking about the play calling. It drove me nuts. I dove into it on the Traylon Burks Film Friday that you referenced, where these personnel decisions just drove me nuts. And they're going out there in these really tight formations that kind of make it hard to create lanes for Derrick Henry to get going in. They're seeing Traylon Burks make these chunk plays, and then they're taking him out of the game, and they're putting in Jeff Swaim, Austin Hooper, Chigakonkwo, and Cody Hollister as their pass catchers on the very next play. Dumb decisions that are easy to correct. You just have to be marginally better at play calling. You have to get marginally better in the receiving core. You have to get marginally better along the offensive line. And we can't lose sight of how close this team was facing all of the issues that they faced in 2022. So I'm right there with you. I don't think you need some massive overhaul to be competitive. I think this is going to be a tough football team. It's in its DNA. And I think they've made the improvements, the adjustments necessary to field a better offense in 2023.
Well, and Braden's already talking about how the energy on the field at practice is wildly different than even last year, when they had a good energy last year, right? They had some positive energy. I mean, everybody talked about Ryan Tannehill's offseason. They said this year it's like everybody is infected with energy. Everybody's going hard. Everybody is putting their best effort forward. And to me, it talks about that maybe just getting rid of these guys that they cut over this offseason, and bringing in the guys that they brought in with really good positive attitudes and personalities and all this stuff, that sometimes it's not just about what you're getting on the field, but it's what you're getting off of it when you get a player.
Do you think that not having a general manager out there with a whistle blowing in practice might have some kind of impact on that vibe
I think
too?
so. Kevin Hogan, who was a quarterback that was at practice, he apparently made an errant throw that didn't get caught by some trainer. That wasn't even a receiver catching the ball, and it dropped at the feet of John Robinson. He blew his whistle, and then he was cut like a couple hours later.
Yeah.
Like, to me, there has to be more that we just don't know about, that we are just gleaning from stuff that people have said or how they've distanced themselves from John Robinson. But there has to be something to the fact that he's not there. Ran Carthon is a people person. Mike Vrabel is a people person. And they didn't bring in guys that just said they love football. They brought in guys that have shown that they love football. And I think that is the big difference between John Robinson's version of loving football. It's like he wanted to force people to love football. He's like, oh, if you don't love it, you'll love it here. You'll love it when you get here. And then they don't. But these guys they actually brought in have changed the whole dynamic. I mean, Aaron Brewer is exuding confidence in his press conference. And he's talking about how, yes, here is what was tough about the guard position I played last year, but it's going to be easier because I'm going to be able to help, and I'm going to be able to get to the second level, and I'm going to be able to chip, and I'm going to be quick, and that's my greatest asset. we're seeing stuff from players that we haven't seen under the Vrabel era, and I think that says a lot more about John Robinson than it does about Mike Vrabel. Like, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, and it's another layer of this improvement narrative throughout the offseason. We talked about how the offensive line may deserve to be let off the hook a little bit. Who gave Mike Vrabel and company Dennis Daly to work with? Who gave them Chris Conley and said, make this work in the Kansas City Chiefs game? It's John Robinson. And I feel like that's another element that we can maybe displace some of this blame to.
Yep. I agree. So we're here to tell you, use the power of positivity. Be like the new day. It's a new day for the Tennessee Titans. It's a new day for your fandom. The power of positivity. That will do it for us. A football show that went by really quick. The time flew by, Stoney. Thank you for hopping on. Remember, SoBrosNetwork.com, StackingTheInbox.com. You have a anniversary coming up this weekend, correct?
Do I? Yeah, I do. Oh my God, you're right. I'm sorry. I've been out of the loop for a week, but yeah, August 5th, this Saturday, Prost and Riot in Mount Juliet. I'll be there. The Sobros Network team will be there. We're going to have some beers. We're going to look back on 10 years of Sobros Network. 10 years. I've been running this company, doing my thing, writing, podcasting, making videos, making stupid comedy stuff that I'm probably the only person that thinks is funny. Been 10 years on the internet, just acting out of pocket, and we are going to celebrate the occasion there. So if any of you guys want to come celebrate with us, come have a few beers, get a pizza, whatever Prost and Riot is serving that day. Prost and Riot, Mount Juliet, Tennessee, this Saturday, 6 p.m.
6 p.m. I will be there. Barring
there
any,
we go.
My granny's in the hospital, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Grandparents are, man, they're having a rough 2023 so far.
Tough stretch.
But I will be there, and Lauren will be there. We'll be there at 6 p.m. as well. So we're coming to celebrate with you. So hey, it's Eventbrite, and it's a free ticket, right? Like just are getting.
And the only reason, I just, the people at Prost and Riot were great. They basically said, yeah, whatever you want to do, just let us know. So I'm trying to get them as accurate of a head count as possible.
Well, that'll be this Saturday, August 5th, if I'm not mistaken, 6 p.m. Yep. Prost and Riot, Mount Juliet. Come join, have a beer with us, and we'll talk some football, talk some silly shenanigans, maybe tell you why Barbie is by far the best movie of 2023 and maybe of our generation. We're sponsored by Seekers Beverages, the Kingston Group, BuildKG.com, Seekers Beverages in East Nashville. Head over there today. Get you some beer, get you some alcohol. You even use Uber Eats because they'll drive so you can drink and bring you any kind of alcohol for any kind of situation. BuildKG.com. Also, you know the drill. Home remodeling firm, locally owned, locally operated. For Stoney Keeley, you can follow him on Twitter at Stoney Keeley or on X. Gosh, I got to get used to it. I got to call it X. You can follow him on X at Stoney Keeley. I'm Zach Lyons. You can follow me on X at FWordsPod. This has been a football show.